Now let's take a look at how to move, rotate, and scale objects. These are called transformations. Now we have three tools up here. We have select and move, select and rotate, and select and uniform scale. But if you pull this down, you'll see that we have a couple of other options here. And we'll take a look at those in just a second. But notice how the first word of this is select. So these all act as a select tool. So I can still use all of my selection tools. By holding down Shift, I can multiple select objects, or I can select individual objects. And this is just the same as the select tool. But when you use select and move, notice how this additional gizmo shows up for the object. Now this allows us to move the object along any axis. So I can move it along X by grabbing that arrow. If I select the green arrow, I can move it along Y. If I select blue, I can move it along Z. Now I also can select in the middle, move it along any axis, or I can select one of these planes to move along two axes at a time. Now we can select and move objects interactively, but we can also use numerics. Now if I go down here in the interface, you'll see that I have three numbers for X, Y, and Z. So if I select one of these, say Z, and type in another number, say 10, notice how that jumps up in Z. And if I want to zero that out, I can just type in 0, and that will go to 0. Now we can also select and move multiple objects. So again, I can select multiple objects and move them interactively as well. Now we also have a select and rotate tool. So if I select this, notice how the gizmo changes, and it changes to a series of circles. So when I hover over these, notice how they highlight in yellow. And if I select one, left click and drag, I can rotate around the X-axis, the Y-axis, or Z. And if I click somewhere in between these, I can get a freeform rotation. And if I select the outside edge, I can rotate perpendicular to my view. Now again, with rotation, we do have numerics here. So this is, for example, rotated 90 degrees in Z. I can type in 0 to rotate it that way, or I can type in -90 to rotate it back. Now we also have scale. Now scale can work across any axis, or it can work uniformly across all axes. By default, we have select and uniform scale. So if I select this object, left click on it, notice how we get this icon here, and if we click in the middle, we can scale this up or down. And also notice how along the bottom, it's giving me the numeric numbers here. So if I want to scale it from 100% to say 150%, I can. Now this icon can also scale along specific axes. So if I want to scale along Z, I can squash it down a little bit. Or if I want to make it skinnier, I can scale it on Y. Now we also have a couple of other options here. We have select a non-uniform scale, which basically works almost the same. But one of the nice things about this is that it opens up all of these to numeric input. And then finally we have select and squash. Now what this will do is that it will scale out when you scale down, or when you scale up, it'll scale sideways. So basically, we can get kind of a squash and stretch. So we'll try and maintain the volume by mirroring the scale. So if we scale lower in one axis, it will scale higher in another. So those are some of the basics of transformations. Now you can interactively transform objects, or you can use numeric input to precisely align and transform objects.